So they're exempt from conventional taxes, and they come off of the rateable base. Instead, they make a payment that is a direct payment to the municipality that's used to keep the municipal tax levy lower. Let's talk about the actual numbers. The township collects about $7.3 million in pilot revenue. That, remember I said there's about $17 million and change, 17.7 in revenue? 7 million of that is pilot revenue. Without, keep this in mind, without the pilot revenue, the township's tax levy would be $22 million, assuming the same level of services that it provides today. All right, strategic benefits of pilots. Well, why do municipalities do them? Well, the first most important thing here is it's to unlock development feasibility. The whole concept of a pilot, if a property could be developed without a pilot, if it could pay conventional taxes, the municipalities and every property owner should say, just pay conventional taxes. That's really the answer. If you can do it under, if you could do this development under conventional taxes, that is certainly what should happen. In all cases with pilots, what is certainly supposed to be statewide at least, is that the municipality should not be granting a pilot unless the development was unable to be done without the pilot. It could support community goals. So it could help make affordable unit obligation compliance, historical preservation, infrastructure improvements, development of community centers, recreational facilities, can make all of that financially possible. All of these things cost money, and everybody wants to see certain things happen in their town, and generally they want to see developers do certain things, but those things do cost money, and it hurts the bottom line, and it's less so about the investability of the project and much more so about the financeability of the project. Can these developers go and get financing, but they have to prove to the banks that the project is profitable at a certain level. So pilot subsidies will generally reduce the annual cost that property owners have. If it's a rental project, the concept there is to increase the cash flows. And if it's a for sale unit project, it's to decrease the amount of money that the property owner is paying in what would otherwise be taxes, and to provide some certainty and stability. And the way that helps the developer is it makes the units more marketable, and it makes them, probably enhances the value to some degree. The two most common questions about pilots. So there's going to be a line of 20 people, now it's down to 10 after this is over. All right, so do pilot agreements negatively affect the school budget? That's the big question. And the short answer, and quite frankly, the long answer is no. What I have underlined there is, does it affect the school budget? The answer is no, and we'll explain why. That $67.8 million is, again, that's the shortfall. That's not decided based on who's paying taxes in the town. It's not decided on what properties are rateable, what properties not are rateable. That's decided based on the expenses that the school has and the revenue sources that the school has. So that $67.7 million is going to exist regardless, and that amount is going to get distributed to the property owners that are paying conventional taxes. So don't worry, I'm not done on that yet. We're not walking away from it. So let's forget about the pilots for a moment. Let's just give a hypothetical, completely hypothetical scenario where we have a church or a charity that purchases a, I don't know, we'll pull a number out of the air, 22.75, oddly specific number, $22.75 million property. Obviously, it's going to become exempt, right? So right now, that property would be paying about $350,000 in taxes because, again, they pay the same rate that everybody else does, 1.539 in 2025, 22.75 million assessment. Of that, 350,000, 241,000 are school taxes, so-called school taxes. The property's moved to the exempt list and stops contributing towards taxes entirely. All right, this is the scenario that we're working with. It's a church charity that buys this $22.75 million property. They stop paying taxes. The question is, does the school get $241,000, right? They get $241,000 less now. No, they don't. They still need what they need. They need the $67.7 million, so they still have to collect that amount of money. That's still their tax levy. It's unchanged. Again, it's the shortfall. Well, if that's, I mean, certainly there's some impact here, right? And yes, of course there is. If that property's not paying the $350,000 in taxes, well then somebody must be paying it. So how does it actually affect if, and again, we're not even talking about pilots yet. We're talking about a property that just simply goes on the exempt tax list, okay? What happens in the calculation is the amount that needs to be collected is unchanged. What happens is the value of the town is decreased. That $22.75 million assessment is no longer, now it's on the exempt list. So the town is not worth $6.372 billion, it's worth $6.35 billion. Well, what does that mean? Your tax levy is still $98 million. Arguably, because the town value would be 0.3% lower, you'd be paying slightly less county taxes and slightly less open space taxes. I was going to add a slide, but Wendy would have had my head if I added another slide here. So we're going to just call it 98 million. It's probably 98,40,000. It's probably 98,20,000. I don't know. It's marginally different. So the way the calculation will work is you take the same $98 million that has to be raised, you have a lower value town, you get a higher tax rate. All right, so because what's happening, very simply, is that $350,000 that that property was paying is being redistributed to every other property owner in town. So the average assessment in 2025 was $1,032,000. Out of 1.539%, the actual average taxes, or the actual taxes on the average residential assessment was $15,893. If we took that hypothetical property, the totally hypothetical property, and we moved that to the exempt list, the tax rate would, or the taxes on the average residential house would have been $52 higher. Well, let's play this through. What if that property paid over $2 million in what we call pilot revenue, and the town kept $2 million of that pilot revenue? This is what would happen in this hypothetical scenario. $14.8 million would change, assuming the same level of services and no additional expenses to the township. That $14.8 million would be reduced to $12.8 million. There's no change to the calculation here. It's still a 6.35 billion town after we back out this 22.75. The 98 million changes to 96 million. The 6 divided by the 6.35, you now have a 1.512 tax rate. What does that mean? Well, that means that under that scenario, even though that property was moved onto the exempt list, the taxes on the average house would go down by $279,000. $279,000 would be great. We'd be paying you to live here. So $279 lower under that scenario. So that's the same scenario. It's a property going on the exempt list. However, that property is paying what equates to $2 million in taxes. All right, so that really leads me to, that addresses some aspect of this question. How do the pilots affect the property owners of the town? That's really the key question. The question is not really how does it affect the school budget. It doesn't. It's how does it affect the property owners of the town. That's the key element here. And of course, it's not a simple answer. It depends. So when you're evaluating pilots, there's a few key questions that you have to ask. Number one, would the project happen without the pilot? That's the key question. The number one sole question is, can that project happen without the pilot? All right. Number two, if it wasn't built, what would the tax revenues have been on that site if it remained undeveloped? That's another question that you have to consider. How does the pilot revenue stream affect the township's budget and its tax levy? Did the existence of the project increase costs to the township? Generally, when development is happening, the number one question that people will ask is how many children are going to come out, school-age children are going to come out of that development? How much is it going to increase the cost to the school? And then the other things, does it mean more road paving or garbage collection? I guess here I think you pay for your own garbage, but those are the types of questions that you have to ask. Will it increase costs? Okay, and if so, how much? Did the project advance key township goals, affordable housing obligations, infrastructure investment, historic preservation, recreational facilities, community centers, etc.? And then finally, did the project create synergistic effects prompting additional redevelopment in the area, or did it boost township values to any degree? I think probably, well, we'll talk about that shortly. So I looked far and wide thinking for a case study, for something to evaluate here. And I found something in Monmouth County. It's a site, Bell Labs Lucent. You may have heard of it. So that property was redeveloped from 2014 timeframe to, I guess, recently. It took, I would say, 8 years or so, 9 years to be fully developed. Now, this may be a little bit small to see back here, but this chart goes back to the 1990s, what that property used to pay in taxes, how it used to contribute to the municipality in taxes, relieving taxes off of everybody else in town. Now, in the 90s, that was the Bell Labs years, they were paying about $4.5 million in taxes. That's at a time that the tax levy of the town was only $30–40 million. They were essentially paying 10 to 15% of the township's taxes, relieving it off of everybody else in town. Well, we all know how this story unfolded. As the site became obsolete and eventually abandoned, the property's contribution rapidly declined down to $500,000, from $4.5 million down to $500,000. In 2009, 10, 11, that continued into 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. They were paying about $500,000. And this is at a time that the tax levy of the town had increased. It increased from 40 million to 70, 80 million. And the amount that property was contributing towards taxes decreased from 4.5 to 500,000. Well, of course, we know what happened. Redevelopment began. Pilots were authorized on the site for the Regency units as well as the building, the Bell Works building now. You could see immediately from 2014 to 15, before a shovel even entered the ground, the taxes had increased. Why is that? Well, I could tell you why, because I was the assessor. I increased the value of the property. As soon as they subdivided it, that property is more valuable. As soon as they got approvals, that property is more valuable. Instantly, I increased the assessment from 26 million to 46 million in a single year. They started paying, go from 550 to about $927,000 in taxes before even putting a shovel in the ground. Then the redevelopment begins, and you have really three components there. You have 40 single-family houses, which are now valued over $2.5 million on average, I would say. You have the 185 55 and up units that are paying pilot revenue directly to the town, and then you have the Bell Works building itself. When you combine all of those things, how much is that property now contributing? Well, it took a few years to ratchet up, and again, this is largely why you'd see the tax levy of the township be able to remain flat, because we're getting additional revenue sources. Costs everywhere have gone up. So, they've gone up on the government side as well, believe it or not. So in 2023 to 2025, we're now collecting about $8.5 million, which is about double what we were collecting in the heyday. And we're still not at the point where we're collecting 10%. It's contributing about 9%, but it's a lot tougher to contribute 10% when the tax levy is $98 million, right? So here's a fancier slide of that same information. We have our Bell Labs years, where the property was paying in the $4 million, the $4.5 million range. The Lucent years, where it started to decline. Abandoned property years, where they were paying $500,000. Property gets subdivided, $1 million. Redevelopment years, the revenue really starts to ratchet up. And then stabilization is where we're at today. It's all fully occupied. All units are paying their pilot in the Regency, and the building is fully occupied. So, which the revenues in the building will increase, and the rate increases. So this will continue to creep up. Same thing with the units in the Regency. They're continuing to pay more every year as well. So this number will continue to increase. All right, so here we are at Vonage, and unfortunately, this is a similar looking chart. This property, I used to have this property assessed for what I thought was a comfortable value of about $40 million. And we had some appeals in the past, and they ended up just walking away from the appeals when Vonage was on the site. And I didn't think we had any problem there. Well, Vonage ended up leaving, and COVID happened, 2020. I started to become a little bit concerned about the large office space market, and I begin to decrease the assessment. The building is now vacant, right? They don't need the space. At first, they only needed, before it even went completely dark, they only needed a portion of the building. So start to decrease the assessment down from 40 million to 35 million. I still thought we were in a comfortable range. Well, the owners of the property have a fire sale on office space, and this property ends up trading for about $17 million. So what's it worth? Is it worth $35 million, or is it worth $17 million? Of course, appeals are filed, and generally, property owner, just like a single-family house that was purchased at a certain price, they'd be looking for an assessment value of that price. In this case, we negotiated a number of $22.75 million assessment for 2024 2025. The technical term of this decline here is not good. We went from $800,000 down to $350,000, and that is not a good situation. And we could go back to the Lucent property and see what that looks like. So can redevelopment help? I'm not going to cover this slide. This is an overview of the project. There's 4 phases, which I'm going to get into each phase individually. This is just an overview, so we'll jump right to that. Yep. In addition to all of these, the units that are going to be built there, and the senior center and the skilled nursing facility, which again, we'll get into each phase. Or it's sand volleyball court, walking trails, a chip and putt green, and a helipad so I could commute to work easier. The helipad's for emergency services, by the way. And then other benefits, inclusive of this project, is 42 affordable units that would go towards the affordable obligation that the township has, the affordable unit obligation. All of this stuff costs money. So the project is certainly, it's considering everything that needs to be added here, considering the scope of the project. It is certainly, it's not financially feasible under a conventional tax scenario. The project cost is going to be nearly $200 million. There's a long development period with high carrying costs. There's specific financing challenges with skilled nursing facilities, which is one of the phases of the project. And when you boil it down to the financeability, will lenders lend for this type of project, considering the scope and all of the requirements that are needed, and interest rates and project costs? what banks need to see in many cases is certainty. And aside from one of the biggest benefits of a pilot to a developer and to a bank that's providing the lending, it's that you're getting a lower amount, sure, but it's more so about the certainty, because the way that the payments are structured provide better certainty than what conventional taxes do. So let's go through the phases. Don't worry, I'm almost done. Phase 1 is 105 for sale units. The total project cost of phase 1 is $77 million. There's 83 market units, 21 affordable units. This is the project phase that is going to provide the 7,000 square foot community center. In the building. All of, yes. Good point. So all of these units are in the building, and that's what's highlighted on this this chart here. I think what phase 1 highlights to the backside, I presume, Andy could correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably where the tennis courts and all of that would be, the open to the public tennis courts, I think, and basketball courts and all that. Yep. All right, so questions at the end, please.
At the end, Kip. Yes, it is. We'll take them at the end. We'll get
yeah. So, yes, the question was if they're age restricted. The answer is yes, but please save all questions till the end. So the pilot calculation, what was negotiated and what is part of this financial arrangement with the developer that's being proposed here? So the calculation would be 1.25% of the sale or resale price. That number was chosen specifically because the tax rate next year in the township, the town went up about 9.41% in value. If you assume a 3% increase to the tax levy next year, the tax rate next year will be around 1.456%. That 1.25 represents 87% and change. That number was chosen specifically. If you remember some of the prior slides, one of the prior slides, how much is kept within the township of every dollar? It's 86 cents. So it was important to us to have the pilot payment represent a number that's greater than what would otherwise be kept within the township. So there's an annual rate escalator consistent with the tax, however the tax levy changes, or 2.5%. There's a 90% cap placed on these units of conventional taxes. So essentially, they're going to be paying 87% of conventional taxes, and every year it's going to change and be reanalyzed, similar to the way that the Regency is done, although that calculation is very different, the base calculation, but there is the same 90% cap. We have to evaluate every year on every single unit, what would conventional taxes otherwise be, what's 90% of that number. That's the cap of what we call annual service charge. In addition to that, they pay a 2% administrative fee. So it's effectively 92% of conventional taxes, 91.8 or somewhere in that ballpark. In this project, no different, 2% administrative fee. Now the township is required to remit 5% of the annual service charge to the county, and a portion of this annual service charge will be pledged to repay a redevelopment area bond, the debt service of a redevelopment area bond. So what's important here, there's two figures that are important. What the projections are as far as the payment and what the projections are of what the township would retain. So phase 1, full occupancy, based on average sale prices projected at $990,000 on units for the market units and $177,000 on the affordable units. The projections put the pilot revenue at, in the first year, $1,094,000. From that $1,094,000, essentially the township would keep about 90% of it, $974,000. Moving on to phase 2, I don't think I need to belabor the phase 2 because it's very similar to phase 1. Now, phase 2 these are townhouses. So these are not in the existing building, but these are for sale townhouses, the same way that phase 1 was for sale units. And there's 52 market units, 13 affordable units. All of these, phase 1, phase 2, everything is age restricted. All right, all of the units, whether be it market or be it affordable. So there's 52 market, 13 affordable. Same calculation mechanics. The projections there, 783,000 in payments. The township keeps 679,000. So phase 1 and phase 2, we're up to about $1 million, keeping about $1.7 million or so. Keep in mind the property now contributes $350,000. Phase 3 is the skilled nursing facility that's projected to be approximately 70,000 square feet. The calculation there for the annual service charge is slightly different, very different, I guess I should say. $3.25 per square foot is what would be paid as the annual service charge. There's an annual escalator of 2.5%, 90% conventional tax cap, 2% administrative fee, and the same concept there. The amount that gets remitted to the county and the amount that is pledged to pay the redevelopment area bond. So in phase 3, year 1 is projected to be $291,000 of payment, the township keeping $217,000. Phase 4, these are rental apartments, age restricted. Before Andy hits me. 32 units market, 8 units affordable, so a total of 40 units. Calculation there, different. These are not for sale units. It's based on their annual gross revenue. It's a percentage of the annual gross revenue, starting at 11%, ending in year 30 at 14%. And that's probably a question. This is a 30-year arrangement on all phases. All right, 2% administrative fee, 5% annual service charge. That's projected at $200,000 and change. Township retaining most of it, about $196,000. So, what does that look like if you project that over time with typical increases of 2.5%? The property right now undeveloped it'll probably pay about $371,000 this year because taxes will go up. The property I now have valued at 25. The deal of the 22.75 is over. It's now assessed at 25.5 for now. And the project fully developed. Now, my note there, the disclaimer is this is assuming all phases are built just for comparative purposes. The reality is this would be staged in over time. But I put all of the years of the pilot revenue in 1 year to compare it to what taxes currently are. All right, so year 1, you're looking at about almost $2.5 million, $2.3 million of payment compared to the $371,000 of taxes right now. More important to the property owners of the township, well, what about what stays within the township? Of that $371,000 at 86.4%, the township would keep within the township $321,000 compared to the pilot at projections at almost $2.1 million. So when you package it all together, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at a project that's gonna, the totals. So over the 30-year span, if you add up what the township would be retained in the township as undeveloped, it'd be about $14 million. That's assuming it remains undeveloped for 30 years, of course, right? And under the projected pilot, it's $94 million. So I'll just leave this slide, I guess, up on the screen because this is an overview of probably all the relevant information, the benefits that is being granted to the town under the project, and what the pilot revenue retention is. That's the key word. What is the township going to retain in the pilot revenue? So, you know, if you remember back to my slides with the hypothetical, there's a reason I chose those numbers, obviously, that I was hinting towards. It's a $22.75 million assessment that pays $350,000 in taxes right now, and the pilot is projected to retain over $2 million.
Eric, first off, thank you very much for taking time out of your evening tonight away from your family to present for us. I know this isn't a common occurrence for you, but thank you very much.
Happy to do so, no problem.
For everybody in the audience, these slides will all be posted online so that everybody can get a copy. We don't expect you to memorize everything that you saw here this evening. It will be out there and it will be posted. Before and whenever we get to moving, hopefully on this ordinance, this committee, which has been a large supporter of our school system, intends, even though the schools will not lose any funding, we intend to give the schools $245,000 per year as part of a shared service, along with the escalators that are in the pilot for the township as well. So, that being said, Wendy, could we move on to item 8, please?
Sure, this would be for approval of the minutes for the September 9th executive and public sessions, the September 25th public session, the October 14th executive and public sessions, and the October 28th executive and public sessions.
Can we get a motion?
Move.
Second.
Ms. Lamountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes, for the minutes, for the meetings that I was at, not for the ones I was
Duly
absent.
noted. Mr. Romano?
Yes, except for the 28th that I was absent at.
Thank you. And Mayor Foster?
Yes, thank you, Wendy.
All right, all the minutes have been successfully approved. Thank you.
All right, so obviously our agenda, we just kind of flip-flopped a little bit just so that we could let Mr. Aguiar do his presentation first. So we are going to do public comment. Again, as I mentioned earlier, please just raise your hand. We'll get through everybody who has a question. We appreciate all your patience and all you guys sitting through that presentation. So without further ado, public comments on agenda items only. Michael, do you have a comment?
Just a reminder, I know we usually make the statement for the regular public comment, but the time limit also applies to the public comment on agenda items only, so Wendy will be keeping the time on that.
Thank you, Michael.
3-minute time limit.
Any questions on agenda items only? Lance, come on up. Yes, you may.
One thing as a point of order, I would encourage everyone in your comment to raise whatever questions you have after your comment's concluded. If the mayor thinks it's appropriate, he'll direct to Mr. Aguiar, Mr. Bayer, our special counsel, who's firsthand handled this pilot agreement, is also available, as well as myself, and then we'll respond as appropriate. This isn't a deposition, so we want to make sure in advance that this.
And that's
doesn't
what I
turn
was going to
into
just
that.
remind you. It's not a Q&A. So we're going to go through your comments, Lance, and we'll address them as best we can.
Okay, so no opportunity for really questions.
You can ask your questions, and then after you complete your public comment, which includes whatever questions you have,
Right.
we'll work on answering those.
So, a separate question, and I mean, you've said before, this isn't a Q&A session. So when is our opportunity for Q&A?
You can call me anytime.
Okay,
I think you can call anybody on the committee anytime. I know I've spoken to many of these people in this audience, many
okay,
times.
all right. All right, first off, would have been helpful to have this presentation prior to this meeting.
A lot of work went into it, and he was working on it probably until about 5 p.m. this evening.
Fine, would it-
Because I was on the phone with him as well until that time.
Still would have been helpful for us to
But
see.
unfortunately, the time we had, we utilized, and
Okay.
here's where we are.
Questions, well, I mean,
And just to be clear, it's not being passed into an ordinance now, so you will have time to go home, review this for
Right.
several weeks, and come back and,
Mayor, if I could just say, it's going to be a public hearing on the ordinance.
Correct.
Right, this is an introduction.
gotcha, okay.
we have to introduce it at some point.
Yeah, no, understood, understood. Just trying to
I got it.
grasp everything. So one thing that I didn't see included on the chart there was the impact to schools, right? Where it's 240 now, right? That we're getting from that property and whatever we got from Bell Works in the past. But there's no line that goes to zero for the schools. Well, based on what you just said now, that you're going to do that, but for Bell Works it does. I'd like some clarity on the Bell Works, the townhomes and homes, what they pay, because according to the county records, they don't pay any taxes from what I saw. So I'd like to understand that. There was a statement about the cap is 90%, but that doesn't mean that's the minimum. That's what actually is being paid. So I'd like to understand what that number is. Plus, I guess there's a 2% administrative fee that goes to that.
Sure. Michael, is that something we can release to the public? I believe it is, but can we?
Sure. I just want to. Are you through, Lance?
No.
Okay. All right.
isn't the amount of so I saw this graph up there. It seems like that graph just keeps going up, but isn't there the agreement with the pilot? Won't that be capped at some number? Isn't that capped at some maximum number that they can pay, or is it based again on some 90% of whatever the assessments the levy needs to be?
Keep going. Finish
Okay,
your comments,
okay.
then we're going to get back to you.
And then on the public space on the Vonage property, what's the cost to the town for that? Construction, upkeep, maintenance? And how does the waste factor into the waste question that's been raised on that property already? Is that part of that equation, that 40,000 daily, I think that's the number, 40,000 gallons daily limit? Right. So how does that factor into that? That's it for now.
All right.
Unless I'll save it for the end.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Lance.
Sure. So thank you, Mayor.
Slides. Again, the school is, their levy is budget-based. Their expenses, less the revenue sources. It's, when you have this is not a question of how it affects the school budget, because it doesn't affect the school budget. It affects the property owners of the town. The $350,000 that property, in this hypothetical example, in the slides here, the $350,000 that they would be paying is redistributed to be paid by everybody else. But at the same time, in the case of a pilot, you have property owners in that property also contributing separate from conventional taxes, in this case $2 million, that would go to reduce the township tax levy. Can I answer about continue with the...
Go ahead, and then I was going to ask Andy to add, and then I was going to add some comments, but you finish up where you're going, please.
So one of the other questions was what is being collected at the Regency and at Bell Works. This is literally on this slideshow, right? I brought it back up on the screen here. These numbers here, there's columns, estimated Regency pilot revenue retention. And the reason that for the disclaimers there is this is not what is collected, this is what is actually retained. This is actually a more important number. This is what's retained by the township. $2.7 million retained on the Regency and about $4.2 million on the Bell Works building. The reason there's a difference from which I covered in some slides, the reason there's a difference between what's collected and what's retained is we have to remit 5% of the annual service charge to the county, but we also collect the administrative fee. These numbers are inclusive of the administrative fee. What was the other question? There was one other question, I thought.
He asked about is there a cap to the pilot, which
No,
Andy or Eric, which one of you guys would like to
there's-
take that?
There's no cap. There's
Okay.
no cap.
Public space, what is the cost to the township?
Well,
Please, Andy.
yeah, so they're donating 5 acres of land, so it's just, right, so that's just like maintaining land, and then the 7,000 square feet is being constructed and donated to the township. So it's like whatever it would cost to maintain your office building or, or whatever, or your library, whatever space you have, that would be it, so.
Okay, and the last one was how does the waste factor into the cost to the township as well?
I think maybe I'll jump in on that
Yeah.
one. The township is still evaluating plans on how exactly to use the 5 acres of space. I believe that part of the calculus so far has been that the pilot revenues will allow and assist in funding the township improvement that is intended to take place there to address first responder concerns in South Homedale. And in terms of any waste treatment that's required, the township intends to install its own septic system specific to that parcel, so it's not tying into the current package plant that's on the site, and there was no need for the township to involve itself in the condominium setup that they have for that. So there is no cost for the township to address waste. That would be addressed as part of the township improvements.
I think that answers it. Thank you, Mike.
Well, Lance, like we said, the slides will be out there, and we will be addressing this again. So anything further, we could definitely get into more. The rec center? Yes, that'll be part of the 40. Okay. Thank you, Lance.
Just a
Karen?
just a reminder to everyone, please ask your questions at once. We'll have you sit down. We want to make sure we get through everyone tonight. That's always been our ground rules, and we want to make sure we adhere to them tonight so we can get through everyone. Thanks.
Sometimes I'm too nice. I'm sorry. Karen, come on up.
I'm not sure this is the right time, but this just is questions on what he had to say.
Sorry, put your name in, thank you.
Karen Strickland, 26 Hayward Hills Drive. I have a statement on the ordinance. Should I read it now or come back later?
Sure.
Read it now, okay. I'm reading a statement on the part of Citizens for Informed Land Use. As you know, a pilot agreement, developers receive property tax exemptions while the municipalities retain 95% of the funds collected. Thank you very much. This enables the Township Committee to bypass the typical 68% allocation to the school district, thus bloating the township budget while shortchanging the schools. The real aim in allowing a pilot agreement is to encourage development that is beneficial to the community. The question here becomes the definition of the term beneficial. Is it beneficial to the township residents to be concerned about the quality and quantity of water being sent to the Swimming River Reservoir, source of drinking water for over 335,000 Monmouth County residents? Is it beneficial for a school district that is the reason many people move to Homedale, to be denied revenue from this property and have to ask the township for funds that were diverted away from the Board of Ed's budget, the Board of Ed's bucket that they could go to for to raise taxes. Since its inception 28 years ago, CELU has advocated for the protection of the southern slope of Homedale from high-density development because it is vital to the Swimming River watershed and to the quality and quantity of our drinking water. The applicant is proposing using an antiquated treatment plant which does not adhere to current standards. Rather than upgrading this 50-year-old packaged septic plant, which has seen multiple violations, the developer is only planning to replace parts. When the system fails from increased 24/7 usage from this high-density residential development, who will be responsible for repairs, replacement of the system? Will the developer pay for the failed system, or will the onus fall on the residents or on the Azura residents or Homedale taxpayers? CELU believes additional degradation to the watershed will occur because the applicant is using a 37-year-old percolation lagoon, which sits inside the currently required 300-foot Willowbrook stream corridor buffer. The Willowbrook is an environmentally sensitive Category 1 stream which flows into the nearby Swimming River Reservoir. All the processed effluent from the homes in Azura of Homedale will be dumped into Willowbrook, either directly or via the lagoon. It is disingenuous that the developer is asking for the additional dispensation of a pilot program to reduce taxes while failing to spend the money necessary to protect our drinking water with a state-of-the-art septic plant system. Just a little bit more. While there is a community benefit to meeting our affordable housing obligation, CELU urges the Township Committee to find solutions without negatively impacting the drinking water of residents. Incentivizing high-density development is inconsistent with Homedale's master plan and the New Jersey State Planning Area 5 designation for protecting environmentally sensitive areas that contain critical natural resources. The Azura development and the pilot are detrimental to all of us. The schools don't have the benefit of a stable source of income. The taxpayers are forced to pay higher taxes when the BOE raises taxes to meet their budget demands, and the 335,000 county residents who get their drinking water from the Spring River Reservoir suffer when the water becomes contaminated and costs more to clean it. CELU sees no upside in improving this pilot and hopes you will take these issues into serious consideration when voting on the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Come on up, sir. Alicia, we'll get to you next.
Good evening, everyone. Mike DeSaro at 20 Huntley Road. I just want to start by saying that's a fantastic, and don't hate me. That was a great presentation. It really was. I think part of the problem is a lot of people don't understand how pilot works. But here's a funny story. I was standing here a couple of years ago, and we had kind of the same banter. I don't know if you hear this night, but it was about the Regency. And I said to the town committee at that point, it sounds like your point is you know what to do with the money better than the schools. Because, I mean, ultimately, and here, folks, to boil it down, it's an 8 to 10% discount on the pilot, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, off property taxes. So it's not like these guys are getting away with murder. They're really not. And a lot of times it is required to kind of get the funding and everything, so that's a whole different story. Now, whether you think it's going to happen with it or not, that doesn't matter. But where I do kind of disagree, and this is my statement, is that that can kind of be worked out anyway. With or without a pilot, those payments, that amount can be worked out. But you're absolutely right. It contributes to the pool, so it doesn't really take away from the pool. But what it does is allows the committee to happen. So here is the funny story. I said, you guys are saying you know what to do with the money better than we do, and I knew everyone on the board at that point a little better. And they said, oh yeah, Mike, you're right. I'll give them credit. Came right out and said it. And said, but don't worry, come on, we have kids in school too. We won't let anything happen. And I said, well, that may be true now, but it might not be true in the future. So here's my only disagreement. Where that tends to fail is that's only if the committee doesn't go and spend the money. You guys might say, hey, with this pilot, you know what? We're good. 31 point something million, right, is the budget now. We don't need, I know costs are going to go up, 3% increase. But we're not going to spend any more money. But that's not what happened. And since 2020, the committee has spent $6 million more. I'm looking at you like you can't answer.
I don't know.
Sorry.
It's not my.
Right? It went up about $6 million. That is literally the delta, right, of how much extra that the town controls rather than having to divvy up 68-32 with the school. So what's happening is the school board is being put in this position of being the bad guys, and you're going to hear from my better half, but to argue. And they're talking about cutting services and cutting teachers and eliminating staff and everything else. We're hearing all these things, and that's all to manage a budget shortfall that is less than that amount, right? So the committee, and I get it too, there were a ton of expenses, things went up. But the committee spent that money, where I was told 9 years ago, don't worry about it, right? And I said, hey, I don't know who's going to be there in the future, and now we have to worry about it because that's exactly what's happening. So I don't really mind, quite honestly. I think, look, what are you going to do with this property? Something like being proposed or 80 ugly McMansions? Really? I mean, that's...
Or 800 townhomes as presented to us.
Well, right. I mean, but there's... I know someone's going to come in with a wish list. 30 seconds.
Just keep going.
Right, because I'm actually, trying to actually say it's not a bad thing. But I think what collectively people are trying to say is when diverting is not the right word, and I don't mean that in that sense, but when the pool of money is only controlled by the town council, to hear well, yes, we're going to continue to contribute the $245 that the school is getting on the current. It's still leaving a shortfall. I would just ask that there be maybe some more communication. I know there's going to be some new board members coming in January. More communication so that it's an understanding. Because look, that a huge value of this town is the school, right? I mean that it is what it is. I mean I grew up one town over, but I moved here because of the school system. And it's important. And if people start hearing, oh, we're going to cut services, oh, we're going to do this, oh, we're going to, cut staff, that becomes a problem. So I would just encourage looking at what I think I heard, and I was about right, 2 million and change. Correct me if I was wrong. Oh, eventually, 2 million change. Eventually, looking at in the sense of well, if that was taxed in accordance with standard property taxes, the school would be getting 1.4, round number. And maybe willing to share that much of it, come to a shared service agreement where the 68% is shared with the school, given back to the school to help cover those budgets. Because ultimately, it's all coming out of our pockets. I mean, you guys live in town. Why am I looking at him? It's all coming out of our pockets, right? It doesn't matter. Whatever committee is spending it, it doesn't matter. It's all coming out of our pockets. So to look at it in that sense, everybody sort of understand that, how that split typically is, 1/3, 2/3, and, kind of keep the money spread in that sense. Otherwise, again, I haven't heard anyone explain it that well, and I've been doing this a long time. So,
Thank you.
20 Huntley, remember next year with the assessment? So, thanks again, guys. Have a good night.
Mike, thank you very much for your comments. So I spent a term on the Board of Education. I was chair of Budget and Finance. And as the presentation showed, the schools do not lose any money. This board, as I mentioned earlier, has been a huge proponent of the schools. The majority of the Board of Education, including the superintendent, came here this year and thanked us publicly. The extra $245,000 is us adding. They don't lose that money, as we showed you. You're not going to look at their budget next year and it went down because we lost a rateable. That's not the way it works. But I understand the sentiment is out there that they can increase their revenue. That is fair and that is accurate, but it's not the same as they lose money. But thank you for your comments, Michael. Alicia, please.
Alicia Unison, 8 Riverside Lane. Appreciate your comments this evening, the presentation that you all helped to congeal to present one side. Sure. That you've presented one side of this evening's concerns. The numbers you prepared this evening are based on a vacant building, yes or no?
Alicia, it's not a public Q&A. Can you make your comments, and then we're going to get back to them like we've done
It
earlier.
felt like this evening's comments were based on a vacant building. I would like to know, based on this development, once it's finished, the conventional taxes, what would that number be? And not on the value of an empty building. I'd also like to ask if the allocation to the schools will be put in writing for the duration of the pilot, or if this promise can be broken were this TC to, or when they decide to exit their positions. I'm concerned that we're not presenting the full picture of what we would actually get from this project if we weren't basing it on an empty building in comparison. And that's my question. What would the actual conventional taxes be at the end of this project once it's built? What would we be getting at that point? Thank you.
Alicia, thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to kick it back to you in a second, Eric, but I believe you made some comments, assuming, it stayed vacant, but obviously not knowing what would be there, which is the challenge that we've been wrestling with the last 2+ years, going back to when DJ was mayor. So that's the hard part to quantify, Alicia. I do think it's certainly a valid question, but I really loved your question about will the funding continue once this board exits? Because as we know, a committee has never supported the schools like this before. Like, we know that. And can it be overturned? Michael, I guess legally, can you answer that question? Because obviously I hope that's not the case. I hope I'm not signing something that's only going to be overturned. We've shown our support, and we're going to continue. But Michael, can you answer that? And then we'll get to you, Eric, to answer the other.
What are you referencing in terms of?
So Alicia asked if, let's say 2 years from now, somebody else were to get control of the Township Committee, can they change it back so that the schools no longer receive the pilot funding that we are looking to give them additionally?
I mean, I would imagine just like you've done with the special law enforcement officers, we would enter into a shared services agreement with the Board of Education. It could certainly have a term of years that will make that agreement effective for the period of time that it runs, and that's a contract. So, you can't just breach a contract. So it would be established if the Township Committee and the board have that agreement, it wouldn't be able to be invalidated if it has a term of years like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Eric, could you answer the other question, please, as best you can? I understand it's
No,
hypothetical as well,
yeah,
but you
yeah,
came up with
I
some
mean,
hypotheticals before.
Yeah, I do have that number that was asked. But of course, keep in mind, this is under a hypothetical scenario that the project is able to be developed under a conventional tax scenario, which we don't believe it can be. I don't think anybody believes that it can be. So that number, it would be about $2.69 million of taxes that the property would be paying, assuming that hypothetical. Under the pilot, that number is 2.3 million. So it's effectively 86% of what taxes would otherwise be, assuming the property was even able to be developed. To just go on with that, as far as the retention goes, the retention difference, it's 88.9% retained versus if it was a conventional tax scenario. And that's in the initial year. Of these projections. So kind of the question, the way that it was framed was, what will it be paying when the pilot is over? I mean, we're talking about 35 years from now. If we just assume 2.5% increases, that would put out like $5.5 million, but nobody has that crystal ball, so we don't know what it will be paying in 30 years.
Eric, thank you.
No problem.
Gentleman in the leather jacket there.
John DePhillips, 2 Beverly Drive. In the presentation, mention was made that the pilot program is utilized in circumstances when development might not otherwise be possible. And also to help make the properties more marketable. So my first question.
John, just try to stay close to the microphone. I'm sorry, they just can't hear you in the back.
My first question is, there seems to be no time element to the pilot programs. In other words, I understand that redevelopment might be difficult without a pilot program. I do question the marketability aspect of the pilot program. I don't think there's any problem with marketing property in Homedale. I don't think anyone has to be talked into trying to, to buy a home in Homedale. With the properties that have been developed around Bellworks, they are now occupied. So I fail to understand what the purpose of the pilot program is with regard to the property owners of the private homes. Why are they still subject to the pilot program rather than just paying taxes like any other resident? Similarly, for the Vonage property, what happens when private ownership takes possession of those units? Why are they still subject to the pilot program? The units have been developed, and there's no need for marketing anymore because they've been sold. So, but they're still paying under the pilot program at a reduced rate, even though the stated purpose of the pilot program has, expired. That's the first question I have. The second question I have is, what happens to the rental units at the property? What happens if, I don't know who would own them, but I guess the developer or some subset of the developer. But over time, if ownership of those property, of the rental units changes, how will the new owners be subject to the pilot program or any tax obligations in the town? And also, I have to, I understand you say that this doesn't affect the school budget, and the school budget is set up to, take care of our kids, because that's why most of us moved to this town to begin with. But, I have 2 kids in the school system, and I can tell you that, for example, my wife has spent the last several weekends working on a website to raise funds for the high school robotics team because they don't have funding. And I also have seen kids involved with the theater programs and the arts programs in the middle of performances have faulty audio systems in the high school auditorium, where sound just cuts out after everyone's worked for months to do these things. So I don't think that there's, there's no shortfall in school budgeting. So the fact that, my concern is that these pilot programs outlive what their stated purpose was from the beginning, and they're taking money away from schools that would otherwise be part of the school budget by the normal course of taxation. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely, John. Appreciate your question. So I'm just going to answer briefly, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Eric and possibly Andy as well. But you mentioned about the marketability, and I agree with you 100%. We're in a beautiful town, a great spot, school system. It is. But what Eric spoke to was them being able to obtain financing for the entire project. So that's really not on the marketing side. It's more on the financing side to get it up and running. And I just want to clarify, on the, you said the single-family homes in Bellworks. Are you talking about the 40-something units, or are you talking about the Regency? Okay, because okay, so there's the 2. There's the 55 and over, which is part of the pilot, and that's a contract, so it runs for 30 years. So anybody who comes in new is still part of that agreement, just like it would be for here. The single-family homes are all taxed. They're not part of any pilot. Eric or Andy, do you guys want to touch on any of the... He was asking about the rental units, which I believe is it's the share of the revenue that comes in is how we make our money. But if you guys can maybe touch on that.
Yes, we get a percentage of the adjusted gross revenue of the rental project. In terms of the pilot, there was a question about the length. It's 30 years. That's the statutory period under the long-term tax exemption law. The other question is what happens if the project changes ownership? So the township, under the redevelopment agreement, has to approve any assignment. The developer has to be financially worthy, and we get to review that. And then, but the pilot runs with the land. So it's going to be recorded, and it will run with the property for 30 years.
Thank you, Andy. Michael?
And just to put a finer point on the question about private parties, I think that's probably specific to individual property owners of units on the for sale units. The thought behind a pilot program is that the 30-year subsidization, which when I say subsidization, I don't even like using that term because we're talking about a 10 to 20% discount off of what the conventional taxes would be. We're not talking about, going to the supermarket and something's 50% off. That's not what this is. But specifically on the private units, that subsidization is part of the calculus that allows the developer to complete the project and to get the investors to do so. We showed you slides talking about how a developer is looking to complete a $200 million project in town. And this financing arrangement is the vehicle that the legislature has given towns to utilize to get that private development and to give them the certainty that they need in order to complete it. The result of that is that the end user, which is the first purchaser, and then the ensuing purchasers get the benefit of that. So that if someone is in year 15 of a 30-year pilot, that's the result of what was done to allow the redeveloper to have completed the redevelopment.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Yellow, come on up. I'll get you next, right behind Jay.
Jay Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. Mr. Foster, just following up on that point regarding the townhouses with the pilot program. I'm actually not here to question pilot or not, but in the spirit of we need the pilot to get the project off the ground, this committee and you in particular, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, reversed what was in the original plan for the townhouses, which is, okay, we need a pilot to sell them within the project, but once it's sold and flipped, that sucker goes to market rates, which then would help the school. But if I remember correctly, you guys said, well, no, we're going to allow an ongoing pilot for the new buyer because it was in, I quote, the spirit of the original deal. So that, I think, is problematic in the spirit of what kind of you're selling here. And I think bundling the comments so far, and I've argued with good friends about this, many you know, the problem the population has, the citizens of Homedale has, is, whether it's you or other guys up there, the Homedale Township Committee marketing themselves as being very good stewards of the budget and not raising your taxes and everything, when you guys have benefited greatly from the soaring revenues from the pilot program. Whereas the school is starving with the 50% increase in busing rates and the health care that's gone through the roof. It continues to go through the roof. I realize your health care has gone through the roof, but you've been sheltered by this. So what bundling, I think the sentiment of all of this is, you can't have it both ways. You're not so great. We love that you're preserving land. We love that you're doing a hard job. I think you guys have done a very good job, but you're benefiting by this soaring revenue, and you're wearing it strongly. We're great. And meanwhile, the school is sucking wind. We are possibly, and I know it's a conflict of interest, because my wife is one of them, we're possibly talking about outsourcing paraprofessionals for the severely special needs kids. That's a really ugly look. Do we want like these drunk substitutes that have been coming in? Teachers? Do we want that for our special needs kids? That's a really ugly look. While we spent, I don't know, $9 million on sports infrastructure over the past 7 years. So I think you have to keep it real. You guys, from what I remember, renewed a pilot program on units that should have gone to market rates. You guys boast at how you're keeping the budget wonderfully and you're not raising taxes while the school is sucking wind. So I hope in that context, some people are pushing for a 40% cut of pilot or something toward the schools. I appreciate you're doing the officers. I appreciate you're contributing to the busing. But I think you need to step it up, keep it real, and say, we're going to give the school system a fixed X percent, because I know damn well there's a lot of cutting going in the schools. A lot of the classroom numbers and coverage is down. So I just hope you guys keep that real. Quick question. I was on the committee that assessed Vonage and said it was an okay deal, this development. There was no talk of all these courts. Where are all these courts going? Is it in the back, as you suggested earlier? Do you know where these courts are all going?
We'll get you out a rendering of it, Jay.
Okay, because there's a lot of these sprayers of toilet water going in the back. Is it going to be near the courts? And last comment. I mean, seriously. And they're going to be needed if we're going to 40,000 gallons. I forwarded an article to the Township Committee and Mr. Collins today about the severe challenges with this developer. severe legal challenges. Were you aware of that when we got into negotiations with this developer?
Not until you sent me that email, Jay.
Okay. Mr. Collins, would you like to comment on us potentially doing this agreement with all these environmental considerations and risks with a developer with this history?
Jay, we'll definitely comment on it. Are you done with your comments?
Yeah.
Okay. We will definitely comment on that for sure. Michael and I spoke about it earlier, so we'll comment on it. We're not going to have a Q&A. I will answer your question about the spirit of the pilot and why I voted to keep the taxes at 90%. As you just saw in the pilot demonstration, we don't keep 90% of our regular taxes here in town, Jay. So when I decided to keep it to 90% of conventional taxes and keep that money here, that was a benefit to the township, which is what I signed on to do 3 years ago when I stood there and made my oath. That's why I did that. And as you pointed out many times in what you just said, yes, this committee is the first one to help the schools year after year after year, starting with him and then with Rocco and now with myself, and hopefully it continues. Eric, could you answer his question about that, please?
Yeah, well, yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, it's not that the recalculation was putting those units at market rate. It's that it put it substantially over market rate. So let's say, and this is the dynamics of the complexities of the calculation in the Regency, which I'm not going to bore everybody with here. But essentially, because of the way that the interest rates are, which is a factor of the calculation, and the high sale prices, it resulted in the calculation being set at amounts that are near $30,000, while conventional taxes would only be about $21,000 or $22,000. So there's a decision made, as the mayor said, to cap it at that 90%. 90% plus the 2% administrative fee. So it's actually
Jay,
technically-
it's not a back and forth. We need to get to the other comments.
I know, but just real quickly.
Really quick, please.
Why wouldn't they just be? I'm not trying to be cute. I don't understand it. Why wouldn't they just have been taxed like any other asset, any other?
They're under a pilot. They're under a pilot agreement.
Doesn't that pilot break at that point or no?
No.
Oh, so the tax. So the
Yeah,
tax
so
calculations are still different.
The township committee had to take some sort of action to cap them off. Otherwise, the calculations of those individuals would be $30,000 on something that taxes would otherwise be $22,000.
Because they're still under the 30-year thing.
Exactly.
Okay, I think that was underexplained.
So,
Yeah.
and Jay, we can't sit here, unfortunately, when we meet and when we try to govern, right? We can't sit here and go through everything that is every aspect of every facet of everything in town. I'm not saying that sarcastically.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of our position up here.
Yeah.
So we have to take all of the facts, which somebody will say, well, why did you do A, B, and C? Why not X, Y, and Z? We're taking into account A through Z when we make all our decisions. Eric, I appreciate you explaining that further. Ma'am, can you come up, please?
Hey, okay, Patty DeSaro, 20 Huntley Road. I have my notes written here. Eric, I want to agree that was a very thorough discussion on everything that's going on with the pilot. I, like my husband, was here back in 2014 when the Bell Works pilot was going on, but I just had a couple of statements I wanted to say before I go to that. I want to thank you all for all the efforts and the responsibility that you're doing to try to encourage development in our town. I know that we all want what's best for our community, including strong schools and stable tax base. I understand why a pilot program can attract investment, and I appreciate the success we've already seen with the Bell Works project. However, pilots also redirect revenue away from the school district because they replace traditional property value taxes with payments that don't fully support our schools. As you know, Homedale schools rely on their share of property taxes for operating costs and long-term stability. When a new pilot is approved, the school district receives little to no benefit from it. I respectfully ask that before approving another pilot, the council publicly shares the financial impact on the school district and consider whether alternative arrangements such as short-term revenue sharing or not using pilots at all might better protect the schools. I'm not against development, but I'm in favor of development that supports all parties of Homedale, and I hope the council will closely work with the Board of Education, which I know you have in more sense than other town councils, in any decision that you make is transparent, data-driven, and fair to our students and taxpayers. Now, in saying that, the reason why we came back here in 2014, and I don't believe any of you were on the town council at the time, was I had no problem with Bell Works in a pilot. We needed a pilot similar to the Vonage property to get that redeveloped. What I had a problem with was Regency. And as was stated tonight by Eric, $2.6 million is what Regency gives our town. But if Regency wasn't a part of that pilot, the school system would get $1.7 million every year, 68% of those taxes if it was not part of the pilot. And I stood here and asked the town council not to include the Toll Brothers Regency as part of the pilot. Because why? The homes were gonna sell. You didn't need it. Did they need it to build Bell Works? Absolutely. To redevelop Bell Works? Absolutely. They didn't need it for the senior housings. They were gonna sell. They were gonna build it anyway. And that was proof, because they're full. So Vonage is the same thing. There are many different types of pilots. There's not just a 30-year agreement. You have 4 phases. Can I please ask you to reconsider your pilot ordinance? Do phase 1, 30 years. Maybe the other phases, do the 5-year share agreement. Do a 10-year. There are other pilot agreements that you can do in turn when those pilots then become no longer, they're out of term 5 years or 10 years later. The tax revenue then goes directly to our schools. All of you here, I have been in the schools for 14 years. I am now proud union president of our school district. You are the only committee that has worked with us, and I appreciate that. And Brian, you sat on that board and you know how hard it is. But if the school board had that $1.7 million, which would be 68% of the 2.6 that Eric mentioned just now from Regency, could you imagine how much the board can budget if they knew every year they were gonna get that 1.7 million? But now we're not getting that for 30 years. So, please, we're all in the transparency of you having these things on the agenda and you're gonna go vote for it and you're doing an ordinance, but I'm asking you, there are options still. Don't rush into this. 30 years, the Vonage building, absolutely, you have to redevelop the building. The 85 acres, they don't need 30 years of a pilot. I said it before, they're invested too much, the developers invested too much, they're gonna build it. Please reconsider the way you function this pilot. Thank you.
Patty, thank you very much for your comments. Definitely appreciate it. I just do want to point out, you mentioned in favor of development and stuff like that, but as you stated at the end, this is actually a redevelopment. And again, this committee has been securing as much open space to prevent development as much as we can, while also still working with the Trenton mandated housing, which has been looming over our shoulders for quite a while. So again, we're trying to walk that fine line, but I'm going to let Michael address some of your other comments.
Sure. So I think it's worth reiterating that if a particular project didn't have a pilot, that does not mean that there's automatically 68% of the ad valorem calculation that the school district would get an increased levy, because the school district's budget is set by the school district. When if you recall, back in the 2000s, the school district actually had to get voter approval to even increase taxes, and if that failed, it would come to the governing body for an override vote. The school district, within the tax cap, is able to raise your taxes. So essentially, school districts in New Jersey are taxing bodies. They are capped at what they can increase both their budget and what they can increase the tax levy. And so they set their budget like Eric was stating earlier. So their budget is set, you have the number $60-something million. They can vote to increase that budget within the cap, and they will get that money. It's just a question of how that money is then given to them, whether it comes from the ad valorem taxpayers that pay the school taxes, or in the township's case, there is a revenue stream that's supported by the pilot, and there is the overall revenue stream that's supported by the ad valorem taxes. And I think the point that Eric's presentation is trying to make is that Homedale taxpayers pay into the tax pool regardless. And so whether the township has the benefit of the pilot or not, between the township and the school district imposing upon taxpayers what they need in order to fund their operations, essentially it's out of the same pocket that you have in your pants paying the tax bill. And so it is admittedly a confusing concept, but it is a misnomer to state that if you take what you would say is tantamount to ad valorem taxes, add 68%, that's what the school district would get absent the pilot. That's not true. You add the further consideration that a pilot can't be granted in the first place unless it's established that the project couldn't be built without the pilot. So it's a false hypothetical because the project wouldn't exist without the pilot. And the last thing I just point out is we talked about this, Mayor, at the last Township Committee meeting specific to the Vonage property. This Township Committee did not enter into redevelopment with this property owner for this end use on a blank sheet of paper saying, hey, we can consider any use we want, and this is, pick this out of thin air. The Township Committee did this balancing the developer's desires and needs in order to complete a project with the fact that, as the mayor just mentioned, the Township Committee is grappling with Trenton mandated housing. And so, in the absence of an agreement with this particular developer, this developer very well could have participated in the fourth round affordable housing process, which is happening this year, 2025. And as part of that process, had they not had a redevelopment agreement, a contract with the town to do what they're doing, there's no reason why they could not have participated in that fourth round process and submitted a plan and demanded to build hundreds of units on that property, which would have had an impact upon the school system. If you developed an inclusionary housing project, it would not be an age-restricted project that they would have proposed. It would have been one that would have had plenty of school-age children who would have then been entering the school system, and the school system would not get any increased funding as a result of that. They would have to increase taxes on everyone in order to fund those.
Thank you, Michael. Next question. Come on up, Francine.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Squire Lane. First of all, your presentation was excellent. It kind of shed some light on me, so I do appreciate it. And of course, and we've heard it, so I won't repeat it, but this committee has really worked a lot with the schools, and I appreciate that. My question is, well, first of all, what I think is lacking is we always say how much taxes we're getting from new development, but what's the expense to the town of having extra traffic? Okay, maybe road paving, more, and this is a senior thing, more emergency services, which might lead us to have to go for paid services because we saw what it was like to get volunteers. Although it's a wonderful police department, I don't want to say anything about it, they're wonderful here, but there's only so much strain on them. So I don't want to sound critical, but my thing is, if this has all been working, and I understand that the school budget is budgeted and it's part of that, why is it now that our schools are talking about cutting services or outsourcing, which I don't know if anybody has done an analysis. When we outsourced busing, we did it because we said we're going to save money. In the end, did we really? Because if costs go up for busing, those companies have to pass it on to us. So, in considering outsourcing, it may say it's like bait and switch. I'm going to give you a good, cheap price now, but over the years, it's going to cost you what it would have cost you to begin with. But my question is, why is our school system saying they have a $2.3 million deficit, looking to cut services, and the town, and if I'm wrong on this figure, forgive me, has an $8 million surplus? So I don't know, is this working right? And perhaps I'd be more agreeable to apply, and I have no kids in the school system, so I could care less. No, I shouldn't say that. So I'm not saying it because I have kids in the system. I do care about the school system, and selfishly it's so. A good school system makes a good town. When your school system goes down, so does your property values go down. Now that might help. I might pay less taxes if my house wasn't valued that. But anyway, I'm just joking with this. In other words, my question is, why is the schools suffering? Bellworks came in, and that should have, helped us. We're not. We're talking about a school system that I'm afraid is suffering from these pilot agreements. Thank you.
Francine, thank you very much, and thank you for what you do on the boards and stuff. You raised the question about, traffic congestion and then the emergency services. Every single one of those things, we speak about on a daily basis every time we meet. So with this redevelopment, it was basically how do we try to mitigate all of those things? Because like we've mentioned here many times today, development is getting rammed down our throat. It's getting rammed down our throat. Look at the towns neighboring us. They all, not all, several of them just had very large projects that they've been trying to fight with builders' remedies that they lost. I don't want that to happen while I'm sitting up here. I will do everything I can to prevent that from happening. That's my 2 cents on it. Michael, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, I would say that certainly the struggles that the Homedale School District, in their own words, and school districts in general are having is not in any way attributable to pilots. It's attributable to a lot of environmental issues, including in state law. And I would just, I sat on the school board too. When you have when your budget is a supermajority labor and the contracts have increases that are well in excess of what you're allowed to increase your budget, you're going to have budgetary problems. And then you add in the fact that the state has cut state aid to many suburban school districts in towns such as Homedale. The state has created a very difficult economic environment for school districts. And so if the districts are, and if you read the newspaper, neighboring communities, not just Homedale, are having the same exact financial discussion on the school board side.
Thank you, Michael. Come on up, Jason. Jason, thank you for all you do on the boards as well.
So thank you, son. Thank you to everyone. DJ, Mayor Foster.
Sir,
for
your
having-
name and address, please?
Yes, Jason Burkle, 15 Hidden Hollow Terrace. So again, I understand these late night sessions. Thank you. Eric, I'm a CFO, so I definitely appreciate your financial presentation. Spot on, perfect. As you know, zoning board, Francine and I, very concerned about environmental concerns here in Homedale. So all I'm going to talk about here is environmental. And I've got a little kind of put together some things here, because every question I ask on a zoning board is how is this going to impact the environmental issues here in Homedale, because we want to keep this pristine. So I am concerned that the developer, the Vonage redevelopment project, is not upgrading its wastewater management system to meet modern standards, and instead is seeking to remain grandfathered under the DEP water permits that are nearly 50 years old. It's a big problem. As it stands, wastewater from this site is discharged directly into Willowbrook, which ultimately flows into the swimming water reservoir, the primary water source for Homedale and hundreds of thousands of Monmouth County residents for 6 months of the year. The proposed redevelopment includes senior living, assisted living, and skilled nursing units. On average, individuals in assisted living and skilled nursing facilities are prescribed approximately 15 medications. Wastewater treatment systems dating back to 1977 were not designed to remove these pharmaceuticals, meaning these substances could ultimately enter our drinking water supply. Big problem. Additionally, although the developer refers to the facility's wastewater as gray water, it will in fact be black water, as it includes effluent from toilets. This water would either flow into the reservoir or be aerosolized and released into the air we breathe. For these reasons, I'm asking the Homedale Township Committee to not approve any pilot program for the Vonage redevelopment unless the developer commits to implementing a fully modern wastewater management system, one that meets current standards and eliminates the discharge of untreated or inadequately treated wastewater into any waterway connected to our potable water supply. To do otherwise would be irresponsible. This project has the potential to contaminate our drinking water, affecting all of us and future generations. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak before you here tonight and the rest of the committee.
Jason, thank you very much again for your service and everything. I can't really get into really what you brought up there, just because obviously it's before the planning board, but I definitely will ask that developer addresses it more at the next meeting for sure. Because it's not my understanding, but I want them, I don't want to speak on something that's before your judicial body.
They have to spend more money. They're cutting costs.
I don't want to get back and forth, but we'll get into that. Ralph, come on up.
Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. I want to thank Brian, Eric, for an excellent presentation, for having a good discussion. and letting.
Hold the microphone closer.
Yeah. Okay. You got to swallow it. That it's giving people an opportunity to ask excellent questions, and you need to do this kind of thing more often, and get it out, get all the issues out in the open. I just have two specific questions. One, Brian, you mentioned that there was a tentative, I don't know if it's even in any budget yet, agreement or thought amongst the TC to contribute of the pilot revenues, 245,000 or some number, to the school system. And you know, as is brought up, that's not, if you just do it 1 year, it's one thing, but potentially you should create some sort of a shared services agreement that as the pilot revenues go up, as time goes on, that the number goes up, and to address it. And I think maybe even a bigger number would be appropriate. Second, and this will turn as much as anything to Eric, but also maybe Mike. One of the premises in what Eric presented is that the need for a pilot comes from what I'll call a shortfall in the financial planning for the project. That without the pilot, the project is not financially viable. Has the developer fully shared all their economics with you so that you can actually say that this is true? I question it, that you know, a project of this sort at that price is going to depend so much on getting a 10%, 15% reduction in the taxes, and that's what makes it possible versus not possible.
I could say unequivocally yes. I'll let Eric and Andy speak to the details, and I would say that, you know, I'm sure that the amounts were negotiated, and the developer certainly would have preferred to have even more of a benefit, but we worked very hard to work with them to provide the least amount of benefit possible while making the project viable.
I mean, if anyone knows Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked many times with Eric, and if he says yes, I'll go by that.
Let's just say the first meeting with the developer with Eric was not very pleasant. They were a little surprised at his tenacity and aggressiveness about challenging assumptions and negotiating what ultimately became, you know, the pilot. But yeah, they're so. But with that, you could talk about what information was shared.
Yeah, well, they did share everything, and you know, it's not just myself that analyzed it. The township had financial advisors as well. But even with the pilot, the returns on the project are certainly sub 12%, in the range of 10%. And you know, when you're taking on that kind of risk, that's really not that substantial. For example, phase one, the total project costs are about 77 million. And when you add up all the projected sale prices of the units, and these are not conservative numbers, this is assuming that they sell for $990,000 on those units inside of the current Vonage building, the return would be $85 million. So you're risking 77 million. Yes, it's a $8 million benefit, but to take on all that risk with $77 million. And it's not so much about whether the developer is willing to take that risk. Developers are typically risk, you know, they like to take risks.
But they need to finance it.
Can they get the financing? And you know, this goes back to the Bell Works project. A lot of people like to say today, well, they should pay conventional taxes, but you have to rewind back to 2013, 14. You know, was that project? Forget about would you get an investor to take a chance? It's more about would you be able to get financing for probably $300-400 million. That's just on the building, and then however many hundreds of millions. I mean, this is at this point probably $800 million of property over there between the Regency and Bell Works, and that's not even including the 40 single-family houses. So, you know, was there the appetite to you know, provide that lending at that time? It's a different situation, and I think that's all I have on that.
No, you know, you've answered my question to the extent that you can. I trust you, especially Eric, to go through all the
I trust him too.
details. And I'm not sure, I don't think I want to do it or see it. I have to rely on you folks to do what's right for Homedale.
Ralph, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to the Board of Education as well. I know you served, I believe you served as president a couple of years as well. So thank you for all you've done for town as well. Come on up, Mr. G.
Ken G, 8 Say Street. Normally I don't like to come up, but I just want to come up to make certain points. I know you mentioned several times, but I think we should acknowledge that. I don't know if you guys are the first one, but this particular township committee has done a lot for the school board, and we certainly want to acknowledge that. I know you guys say that quite a bit, but thank you. I want to tie in with what Ralph just said in terms of, you mentioned that was kind of new, the $245,000 in terms of from the pilot potential to the school board. I would argue that if you could tie that in as some kind of percentage so that, in fact, when the revenue does increase, that they would have some kind of commensurate pro rata increase. That's something for you guys to consider. Two is, I hope hopefully this doesn't get to his head too much, but that's a great presentation. And this is coming from someone who likes numbers. However, reality and hypothetical is very different. So, you know, you did great job. No, don't get me wrong. And I mean that sincerely, okay? You did a great job in presenting all this, and you did a really good presenting a lot of stuff so that the rest of us who are not as immersed in this thing could understand it. The only comment I want to make is a couple of things, obviously. Despite the examples you went through, real life is actually messier than what you just did, because in your example, use the $2 million property, and all the math works out basically, and you said it's, you know, left pocket, right pocket kind of argument. The reality is that's not really true. And part of it is the fact that Bellworks is a perfect example, since you use that example. We knew at the time there was $500,000 drop in tax revenue. But the first few years in which the pilot went into effect, and I know it's not your department and Bill's not here, so maybe Chris could jump in if he wants to, is that when they did the budgeting process, the amount of tax levy they had as part of that process, as we know, you focus on the tax levy, which is the differential between the revenue and the expenditure appropriation. They dropped the 500,000, the 500,000, they didn't get that until maybe the third year, because in 2017, if I remember the numbers right, they got, on a net basis, 80-something thousand, and then that only went up to 200-something thousand the following year. So from a budget standpoint, they took out a lot of the expected revenues, and therefore the tax levy actually had to increase. And then on top of that, after even it was successful, some of the revenue were, and appropriately, but maybe too much, is conservatively forecast. So in other words, we got the $7.5 million, but what was in the budget was not $7.5 million for last year, as an example, right? So there was, for lack of a better term, slippage. There were excess revenue that came in. So in fact, our tax rate did go up, because if it was a perfect world, and they did that, then our tax rate wouldn't have been as high. So it's not by much, but I'm just saying is there was slippage, there was excess revenue. The last point I want to point out is that, you did a complete, there were multiple steps all in there, and we understand completely. The budget is the budget, so the school board, so several members here can decide whatever appropriate budget that they need and required. However, on the collection side, getting how to fund that, right, that's an issue, because they are capped at the 2%, as Attorney mentioned. But also the fact that at the moment when a pilot goes into effect, that rateable base did drop. So before the mechanism to address, to re-up the rate, in fact, they did lose revenue. Now, because of your collection process, you changed the rate, and therefore you made them whole in terms of what they need to collect. So the last point I know that went through is that, and you guys, I know are trying to do the best you can between the schools and the township and all the stuff you guys need. But at the state legislature level, there is a state bill and a companion assembly bill, in fact, that will require the sharing of pilots between a municipality and the school board. So, everything, again, let's take Homedale out of the equation, is that everything is not always working hunky-dory and where there's good faith in trying to solve a problem, an issue because we're one town. But in fact, that is something being looked at. So with that, thank you again for what you guys do.
Thank you, Ken, for your comments. And I just want to add, because I didn't answer you, Ralph. You asked about, is it a one-year thing or is it continuing? And then just kind of tie into what Ken said as well. My hope is that it becomes part of the ordinance so that it does continue for the 30 years. And that's the whole point of doing it, right? To make sure that it's going to continue to assist as much as possible. But on top of that, I've had people say we should give them more money. I've had people say we should give them less money. I've had people say we should give them no money because they're not losing money because of the pilots. So we had to sit down and come up with what we felt was fair and what we felt was right. And that's why we've worked with the school board every single year. And as long as I'm here, I will push for that to continue as well, as I know my colleagues up here will as well. And that's kind of where we're at. Next question. Come on up, Pat. Man, you were patient.
What's that? The main one? Give me a few minutes here. No, it's at the end. This one.
Patrick Trisquita, 56 Line Road. Eric, congratulations. That was an excellent presentation. I followed it. The numbers were excellent.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Oh, sorry. Start over. Patrick Trisquita, 56 Line Road.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Love the numbers. They were all great. And I want to thank the committee for many years on doing this project. I think this is great for Homedale. 700 square foot community center, 5 acres of land, pickleball courts, basketball courts, senior complex, walking trails, biking paths. I didn't know about the chip and putt green, and of course I knew about the heliport. And it goes to our 42 units go to our obligation for the next round. Homedale is essentially finished for the next round with this and the other projects on 35. So I think this is a great thing for Homedale, and thank you for moving this forward to the goal line.
Thank you, Pat. Sarika, did you have a question? Please. And thank you for your service, Sarika.
My name is Sureka Kolor, and I live at 43 Windswept Road. I just want to say at the outset that the following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinions. I got that out of the way, right? So I have a couple of comments and a question. Comments was that first of all, the presentation was excellent. I understood more about this than I ever did. Thank you very much. So the school budget, as you said, was independent, is an independent entity, and school is not losing anything because of the pilot, completely, 100%, right. But neither is the township losing anything from the pilot. That we have township and we have schools. Township is gaining and school is not gaining. Township's not losing, school is not losing. And we are, I would like to think, like sisters to each other, because whatever we both do will raise the taxes ultimately. So it seems like right now the school is facing a huge budget deficit of, it's going to get huger even, of up to 6 million or even more as time goes on. And the township has a surplus of money. So there are two components. One has a surplus, the other has a deficit. And I completely appreciate, what the township did for the schools the last couple of years, but that is on a case-by-case, year-by-year basis, and it's better really to have something more consistent that's apportioned so that we know what's coming. So then if the township has a surplus, I would think then you can reduce the municipal portion of the taxes, and then if the school is raising taxes, at least the public is gaining something from it. So ultimately, we want the public to gain something from it, whether it's township or school, correct? Or, it seems like it seems like common sense that the township will really share, part of the pilot portion with the school, or ask the public, what they think and see what happens. So these are the comments. My question is, after listening to all this, it might seem like a dumb question, but why can the pilot money not be shared? Is there some harm in doing so? Is it unprecedented, like nobody in this country has ever shared pilot money? Is it illegal, detrimental? Why is there such a resistance to sharing the pilot money? So that they can be consistent, the school can depend consistently on a certain amount coming in. So that's the question.
Thank you, Sharika. Again, for your comments. So, as far as pilot agreements, there's, you can write it up any way you want. Obviously, with this project and the other two projects that had the pilots in school, the main thought was the schools are not being impacted, right? They've been 55 and over, and the other one was straight commercial. So they weren't adding any kids to the school system. So I think that's the main thought that was behind that. My personal opinion, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the committee, is after sitting on the, school finance, budget and finance board and being part of that, and just looking at the state calculation, which isn't going to work. It doesn't work. It's over, it's done, it doesn't work. Every town around us is having the same issues. And that's why we came up with, okay, we are going to share this pilot, which has not been done in town before. So we are going to share it, and each year we will sit down like we've done, and we will look at what we can help with. I personally don't feel it's prudent on behalf of our 17,000 residents to say, okay, we're going to guarantee this amount, because if we do lose ratables on the township level, the schools do not. So we have to look at it, in my opinion, on an annual basis and see where we can help and what we can do. That's just my 2 cents on it. Next question. If the township loses ratables, we lose money. The county and the schools are 100% funded every year regardless of what we bring in. So that's my point of that. Whereas if we committed to saying we're going to split it 50-50, we still have to give that. Even if we lose ratables somewhere else, the school still would get that agreement. That's all. That's my only point to that. Ma'am?
Hi there. Victoria Scalavino, 8 Hidden Hollow Terrace. I had something prepared, but I'm not going to speak it. Just to say that it ditto on many things that people have said, specifically Burkle, the person Jay in the back, and Karen Strickland. I would like to focus on something that went by pretty quickly about the water and the watershed. So 2 questions for you as a team. Doesn't have to be answered today. I would like to know what you will do to bring in a third party to look at the water and everything that's been proposed, because it's completely subpar. It needs to be leveled to a much higher level than what it is proposed today. It must be running at least maximum 85% for it to actually be sufficient. And it's not, the proposal is multifold the size of what the current population was years ago at Vonage. So I'd like to know what you will be doing to bring in a third party apart from the current whomever's looking at it. The second is the planning board. I sit through those meetings, and quite frankly, it's a joke. So you mentioned it's going to go to the planning board. I'd like you to have a discussion with the planning board that they are there not to rubber stamp whatever it is you want. They're there for our benefit, to actually hear what's going on and plan. We're the residents that voted all of you in. You're here for us. I appreciate everything that you're doing. It feels like I'll rush through to get through with certain things, but I'd like an answer of what you will be doing on those 2 things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. As I mentioned earlier, it is sitting with the planning board. We will have them speak more about the wastewater for sure. My understanding from what most people have out there is very different, but again, it's with the planning board, so I'm not going to speak to that. Third party, it's same part of it. We got to look at it as far as the planning board and see what we can do there. Michael?
Mayor, to respond to the question, I might also ask Andy Bayer to speak to the redevelopment agreement. I don't want to get into any specifics about the merits of the wastewater system, because that is the subject of the planning board. I know there's witnesses that are carried over, so we don't want to touch that. But it is here on the Township Committee side relevant to talk about the fact that the redevelopment agreement has particularized terms that require the redeveloper to work with the township engineer and to account for the system in certain respects. So I do want to share that, because there are some terms.
Yeah, the agreement itself, Mike, so at the time we were negotiating this, the committee had the same concerns about the wastewater treatment plant that have been expressed this evening, and I know over time. So the provision in the redevelopment agreement itself says is that the redeveloper is obligated to ensure the wastewater treatment plant is operational and licensed for the flow required for the facilities, meaning the project, that are operating on the site. They have to provide all information requested by the township engineer to ensure that the wastewater treatment plant is properly operational and licensed for the flow. And it goes on to say any additions or upgrades, as people want, required shall be their responsibility. They have to get DEP approval. Should redevelopers seek to construct any new facilities, they have to provide all the information that they submit to the DEP, to the township and the township engineer, so that we could have our experts review it. And they have to obtain the township's engineer's approval to proceed with any addition or upgrade. They're required to contract with a licensed operator to run and maintain the wastewater treatment plant, and they're contractually obligated to ensure it's in good operating condition and fully licensed. And they have to provide, once the units go over to the condo association, they have to post the maintenance bond for 3 years to ensure the transition between the developer and the condominium association. So that's the point is that we always wanted to ensure that it's fully licensed, fully up to DEP standards, and subject to our engineer's review and approval.
Thank you, Eddie. Victoria, I just want to add one other point. I sat on the planning board for 5 years, so when you say rubber stamp, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. There's a lot more conversations with the attorney, with the chair, the co-chair, the professionals. Everything you see at the meeting is not everything that goes on. I've had meetings with other people in town here. They're more in the know, especially asking, because the last thing they want, this is speaking personally when I served 5 years, the last thing I want is to be up here without knowing exactly what's going on with each project at the time. And I'm not speaking about Vonage right now. I'm just speaking about my experience on the planning board. Next question. Thank you.
I just would like to make sure that all of this sounded very internal. Again, someone on the outside really needs to look to see so that we don't turn into another Flint, right? We do have high, we pay a lot for our...
As Andy just mentioned, it does have to get approval by the DEP, and I agree with everything you said there. Correct. Yes. Next question. Come on up, Pete.
Testing, everybody? Peter Franco, 5 Hopbrook Lane. In regards to CHA, the developer of this project, and everything that's been coming out recently, especially at our last project over, what was it, the Salem, the hospital down in Salem that they borrowed, I believe it was like almost $40 million in loans and grants from a fund that they essentially screwed, and they're in court now, and they're being liened. And they failed to pay, and the owner's actually, from what I've heard, is moving assets out of his name into his wife's name, but I think he got caught. But regardless, you guys bank on this pilot money. Is it a check from the developer that comes to you guys? If the check bounces, is that check going to be good? I mean, can you guarantee this money is going to be there when this job is done? Or is this guy going to sell the project, 10%, 20% of the way through? The other thing, you're talking about risk. Who's taking the risk? You're saying the developer's taking a huge risk when he's borrowing money from everybody, to essentially get this project done. So there is no risk on his part. It's the people that are putting the money up for him. You're in finance. You would understand that. Going about the bond. When we were here last time talking about the bond on the treatment plant, they said absolutely not. He just mentioned a 3-year bond. Also, a job of this size, $200 million, I think he said. Is he going to bond this job? Does the pilot program eliminate the fact that he should bond this job as a company? Were there feasibility studies recently done after all this stuff coming out about the financial position that the developer, Bill Kogan, is in? Knowing that he is or was with the Murphy administration, and he was just named to Cheryl's administration, or I should say transition committee, it just looks a little weird that he's being, oh, we're going to grandfather this, grandfather that. It just looks like he has hooks with the right people. Just my opinion. What else? It seems like we're banking on all 4 phases of this project, and they keep saying if the plant fails after phase 1, if they pick up and leave, now you have, I'm not sure what the acreage is after phase 1.
88.
Okay, 88 acres. But if, say, they just do the building, what does that leave us with? 75 acres, say?
Just keep, just keep your comments.
75 acres.
Please.
Does that go for another rezoning for another use to generate more money or a tax base for the town? I mean, would be something else in the works for it? And I spoke to the lawyer that represented the fund, and for that promissory note that he was trying to screw out of the money. I spoke to the people that ran the hospital. I spoke to the people that were on the board for the fund that they set up. And aside from reaching in the couch and getting 50 years worth of advances on my Christmas money from my parents, I had 2 other investors that literally, I called Bill last week and offered to buy the entire project out from underneath them. And he is adamant that this project is going through, he's getting all of his approvals, and everything is going to sell. So he seems a little overconfident on what's going on, knowing it hasn't passed the planning board and it hasn't passed the committee yet. So it just looks crazy to me sitting on the outside and trying to not scramble but put together real opportunities to use this Vonage project other than this. And I get the whole affordable housing, which I think it was 17% would be very low income to low income, 33% or whatever would be low to moderate. So it is low income, according to. Go ahead. No, because according to going back to when you went to my property and you ran your video and kind of tried to make me look like an idiot. It's in the master plan and it says it. 37 very low to low, 13 very low to low, 37 affordable to low, and then 50 affordable. The 50% seems to be the only affordable part of what you're saying. So essentially, I think I am right on that, and so on. What else? I think I covered everything here. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Andy, can you touch on the last part about, well, there's 2 things. Can you answer the question about the funds coming into the town, and then can you answer the question about the affordable units, please?
Well, I could address also, because it's part of, to obtain the, to apply for the pilot, the developer had to submit an application, which is required by the law, and that actually shows that they are putting in $67 million of equity into the project. And you can see this, it will be on file.
Pete, we're not going to go back and forth just because of the time. But as far as, Andy, the pilot revenue, can you speak to that? Like Pete intimated that if they sell but don't pay us, like, do you want to walk through how that works?
It's like it's just like normal taxation in that regard. So if the pilot payments are not made, then we get a lien on the property for it, just like if it was a homeowner.
But with that being said,
Yep.
Like I said, I spoke to the lawyers, I spoke to the people that ran the hospital, the people that ran the fund. They leaned 5 of his jobs from what they said. So if they leaned this job and there's a profit and there's money to be given to the town, how?
So these are, I know Brian doesn't want us to go back and forth, but these are like separate legal entities created for this project. Urban entity renewal companies by law that are for this project. So if one has a judgment against Bill Colgan for some other project, they don't get to these projects. So they just don't. They're separate legal entities.
And Pete, I just want to add, you're bringing something up that was brought to the township's attention today, when this is something that's been in the works for close to 3 years. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, Kristen.
Pretty good.
Kristen Solero, 5 Hopbrook Lane. First, I want to support and emphasize what Silu said. Polluting our drinking water for a tax break, it's not worth it. High-density development in a rural conservation zone, blatantly disregarding the Homedale master plan, it's not worth it. Is anybody here tonight as a representative from the Board of Ed? No, right? So in the business world, if we're putting forth a proposal and we say, we're doing this and it's going to be really good for you, you need to be there to speak to say, it's good for me. Do you understand?
This was a presentation, Kristen. We're not going through a Q&A. Your comments, please.
It's rhetorical. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if the Homedale Board of Ed was here, I'd like to hear them say, yes, this is good for us. This eases our budget shortfalls, and we're not going to be hearing about all these horrible, cuts to services, no more courtesy busing, all of that. Okay. Make no mistake, there's a huge difference between what the tax payments to the school would be if this property was built and taxed at a regular rate versus the pilot. Multiply that by 30 years. We're putting the schools in a ditch versus elevating them. We have a choice. Why wouldn't we take the better road? We are sentencing the school to suffer needlessly for 30 years. And regarding your buddies at CHA, if you lay down with dogs, you're going to come up with fleas. It's not going to work. Good luck.
Thank you, Kristen. Next question. Get Joe.
No, I just want to comment on that. I'm the liaison of the Board of Ed, and as people have said, this township committee has done a lot more than any other township committee for the schools. Year and a half ago, Mayor Impreveduto and I worked with the leadership there to do the Crawford's Corner project, and that was the result of planning and good communication between the Board of Ed and the township committee to get that project done. As the liaison this year, I've reached out to leadership at the Board of Ed multiple times, and I have had 0 meetings. I have wanted to plan for 2026, and there hasn't been any communication to us. There has been no planning. So I think it's important, especially with this kind of crowd here, to know that there needs to be some accountability from the Board of Ed as well. Reached out multiple times to try to plan for 2026 and gotten radio silence. So, again, that's my liaison assignment. Nothing all year. So it's the Board of Ed president. I liaison directly with the president of the Board of Ed. And I did that the year prior with Terrence Wall. And as much as he and I fought, we got the Crawford's Corner project. We met every quarter. We got the project. He planned for it. He brought it to us. We executed it. There hadn't been anything this year.
Thank you, Joe. Next question. Seeing none? Okay, Wendy, we're going to move on. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Come on up, please.
Just come up to the microphone first. Anna Grunberg, Tanglewood Lane. So you said the project is age restricted.
Can you just come
Sorry. The low-income housing project, you said it's age restricted?
Not a
No? Okay. 55 and over?
It isn't 55.
Okay, so does that mean that no children are allowed to live there? Or are these 55 and older allowed to bring high school children into the school district?
You finish all your comments and then we'll come back to that.
Okay, so that's one of the big questions. The other thing is, the comment is, people move to Homedale, as I did myself and a lot of my friends, for the open space and a good school district, which at this point, it's $1.2 million per house and about 20 grand in taxes that we're paying annually. The problem is we're cutting the schools, the school district is cutting a ton of money with paras. Kids in village currently are being put in front of screens to do Spanish lessons because the Spanish teachers are cut. The amount of money that the school is cutting at this point, and for 2026, we're already in the red. $4 to $6 million is what I'm hearing. I don't see why and where we can find a project, or if there were any proposals that would potentially bring money to the school district and do not require a pilot project. So that's my other question.
Thank you. Eric, do you want to touch on that? I guess there was another question in regards to the school budget. Just about a project that would bring money to the school budget. Do you want to just kind of clarify that?
I mean, the school, if you have a development occur, it's not going to increase the amount that the school is collecting. It's just not how it works. The school comes up with their budget, their tax levy based on what their needs are, and less their revenue expenses. Less the revenue, less the expenses. So it's just simply not done. It's the calculation. Everybody has the calculation. Everybody that spoke today has the calculation reversed. Everybody's coming up to the microphone saying that having a property value as a rateable is going to generate taxes. That's not how it works. You have it backwards. The budget is determined and then it's distributed based on the way the values are relative to one another. As the tax assessor of the township, it doesn't matter to me what the tax levy is, frankly. My goal is to just distribute it fairly based on the values relative to one another. And I hear back and forth with where this revenue goes, whether it's the school or the municipality. And I think what people are failing to recognize is that if you had a revenue source at the school, it would be at the expense of the township. So from the property owner's perspective, it's the left pocket and the right pocket, okay? Best case scenario for the property owners of the town, it's a neutral. And the reason I say best case is because I don't know the calculation of the school aid. There's state school aid involved that if the school had a new revenue source, I suspect, I don't know this answer, the school board probably does, it's likely or it's possible that the school would receive less state aid if you have a new revenue source. So I guess I would caution everybody to do research on that before, before directing revenue to from the left pocket to the right pocket, because ultimately, if you get less state aid overall, that could be a negative impact. So basically, in best case scenario, it's neutral to the property owners of the town. In worst case, it's a net negative. There's no scenario where it's a net positive. So, and I'm saying that I have no horse in the game between this discussion between the school and the township. It doesn't matter to me. But I'm just speaking to you as the property owners of the town, that could have a net negative benefit of increasing the overall tax levy of the township if you're going to receive less state aid towards the school.
Thank you, Eric. Michael, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just hearing Eric out, I just want to kind of make an analogy for everyone's benefit, because we continue to hear that if more ad valorem taxes came out of the Vonage property, the school district automatically gets more money. If the redevelopment plan allowed for the construction of two $2 million homes outside the ring road over at the Vonage property, and those were conventionally taxed and they went online, the school district is not getting an extra dollar whatsoever. All that's going to result in is that everyone's taxes overall will go down a few dollars because less taxes need to be pulled out of your pocket because there's more taxes coming out of those two $2 million homes to fund the overall taxes that are required to fund the township and the county. So it's a complete misnomer that just because something is going there that would be conventionally taxed, the school district's getting more money. Now, the school district may be able to vote to raise their budget and raise the tax levy commensurate with it, and it becomes less of a tax hit because there's an additional rateable, but that's because the school district increased its budget, which is what we're continuing to explain to everyone is what's in the school district's power.
Thank you, Michael. Any further questions from somebody? Sarika, hang on one second. Sarika. Yes, Andy, I'm sorry. We did forget that. My apologies.
Yes, there wouldn't be school kids. I'll remind everyone that this is there can be like adults living under age 55 in there who are children of the, right? But it's like an 80-20 rule. So like generally 80% of the project has to be 55 and over. Mike, you have any? No, but no kid. So I'm going to remind everyone too.
Guys, hang on one second. Just let him please explain.
This is also an assisted living and a nursing home on this project and the senior rental. So the idea that like there's going to be families would want to live here, I don't think that would be the case, but But the answer, right, Mike, you're looking at me. I don't know if you have a different view.
Unless there's a rare applicability of a federal disability law
Correct.
for a particular individual, generally speaking, and I think we could speak to it, I defer to the school district, but my understanding is from the Regency, there may be 1 or 2 individuals, but there's nothing that is of any magnitude compared to what it would be if this was a non-age restricted project, which was the likely alternative here.
Thank you, Michael. Any?
No.
No.
No. I was speaking of adult children of seniors. That's what I was speaking of, not minors.
Okay, let's keep it public questions here.
Did you, Matt? Do you have a question or comments?
Hey guys. Hello. Matt Weisfeld, 10 Riverside Lane. I can't believe you're still going on. I mean, I left like 3 hours ago and you're still going, so more power to you. Just 2 clarification things. First, is there an exit strategy in the event the developer ends up not working out from the lawsuit things and all that stuff? I'm not saying there is anything bad, but if it turns out that this is forbidden fruit and things can't go forward, is there an exit strategy? Is there a way to get out of this? Because I don't know a lot about it. That just came out. I read it. I really don't. I mean, Mike might be like, it's nonsense. But to me, it's frightening. So I kind of want to know, like, is there a way out if it's legit?
Is that you done with your comments, Matt?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get the whole thing. I'm sorry. It was from the last thing that was just said. Oh, thank you. So basically, if you're 55 and older, you can have kids, though. I mean, like, they can have kids in there. They just have to be over 55. I'm saying, I'm sorry.
You could have, I was saying, adult children. Like, you get like a 55.
Andy, will there be school-age children
No.
as a matter of
No.
regular course?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Is it possible, as the attorney stated, if there is some kind of federal reason to allow, you may encounter that?
I'm just kind of trying to re-ask it because they're all still.
Thank you. Matt, as far as the exit strategy and everything that came up, we were just apprised of that today. So we're going to continue to look into it, and there's no discussion on that.
I guess the only point I'd make is that the developer here is the owner of the property. It wasn't like it was like like some land that the township sought to be redeveloped. A property owner came to the township. We can't control who owns property. They own the property. Right? And so whether it's CHA or some entity that Colgan owns or is connected to, we don't control that because he owns it. And if there's a breach of the redevelopment agreement, we have rights under that agreement. So that is as well. So
Thank
if the
Thanks, guys.
project's not developed, we have rights under the redevelopment agreement.
Thank you, Andy. Come on up.
I think,
We're at 10:20. Anybody who's been up asking questions, again, we're going to postpone them to the next. We're going to take anybody who hasn't asked questions.
Mary Ellen Principi, Bethany Road. Just a suggestion for Mr. Morano. Why don't you go to one of their board meetings? Stand up and talk to them. I know you're busy, but that's a way to get in touch with them.
Thank you, Marianne. Any other public comments? Okay, Wendy, seeing none?
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which would be for resolutions 2025-298 through 2025-310.
Can we get a motion?
Move.
Second.
Ms. LaMountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Foster?
Yes.
Okay, resolutions 2025-298 through 2025-310 have been successfully passed. Thank you. Next is introduction of ordinance 2025-30, which is an ordinance approving application for long-term tax exemption and authorizing the execution of financial agreements with authorizing the execution of financial agreements for payments in lieu of taxes with Senior Condo Urban Renewal LLC, Senior Cottage Urban Renewal LLC, Senior Care Urban Renewal LLC, and Senior Multi Urban Renewal LLC, pursuant to the long-term tax exemption law and the redevelopment area bond financing law with respect to Block 13, Lot 15, 23 Main Street in the Township of Holmdel in the County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith. The motion is to adopt on first reading, publish in the Asbury Park Press, and set the public hearing for December 22nd, 2025.
Can we get a motion, please?
Motion.
Move.
Ms. Lamountain?
Hold on. We had a motion from Committeeman Romano. Do you second?
Did you
We had two
Move.
motions.
I apologize.
Okay.
That was a second.
Okay.
Ms. Lamountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes, and I also just want to thank Eric, Andy, and Mike, and Mayor for, I know this was a marathon negotiation, and I just want to thank you guys for your efforts, and you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Foster?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2025-30 will be set for public hearing. Thank you. Thank you. The next is introduction of ordinance 2025-31, which is authorizing lot line adjustment for the property designated as Block 27, Lot 6 on the Township Tax Map in furtherance of the redevelopment of Block 27, Lot 7. The motion is to adopt on first reading, publish in the Asbury Park Press, and set the public hearing for December 22nd, 2025.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Lamountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Foster?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2025-31 will be set for public hearing. Next is introduction of ordinance 2025-32, which is an ordinance authorizing an easement swap involving Block 29, Lot 3702 on the tax map of the Township of Holmdel. This motion is to adopt on first reading, publish in the Asbury Park Press, and set the public hearing for December 22nd, 2025.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Lamountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Foster?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2025-32 will be set for public hearing. Next is hearing on ordinance 2025-29, which is an ordinance amending section 2-26 titled Department of Police.
Any public comments? Seeing none, Wendy?
Okay,
Can we get a motion?
Move.
Second.
Ms. Lamountain?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Mayor Foster?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2025-29 has been successfully passed. Thank you.
We are not going to be having any departments or professional reports or committee reports for this evening due to, obviously, we had the presentation by Mr. Aguiar. Again, thank you very much. So that is it for the business from the committee. We will open it up for public comment. Mr. Iannello, come on up. I'm sorry, he got his hand up before you. You're next.
Just really quickly, Mr. Foster, you said you would be commenting at the end of the meeting about the developments we learned about the property owner for bondage.
No, I didn't say I'd be commenting on them today. I said we'll be looking into them further,
I
Jay.
thought
We
you
just
said
got
you would
no,
comment
no. I
on it
didn't say I'd
later.
comment
I thought
on.
you said it later. I don't know. I could go.
I
to the
didn't mean
tape.
later 3 hours. I guess go to the
okay,
tape,
okay,
Jay.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Thank you. We got the
But
email earlier
I
today. We'll look into
I
it.
just wanna
Thank you,
reiterate
Jay.
the word frightening. It's very frightening. And are we
I heard
that
every word everybody said today,
Are we that
Jay.
desperate to do a deal with someone like this? It's sad if we are.
Thank you, Jay. Please.
I will be.
Jen Anisi, can you hear? 7 Country Squire Lane, Hometown. I just heard how you've passed those ordinances, you voted on them, and then it ended with, and you're going to vote on it, or you're going to have a public meeting, December 22nd. That sounds so unrealistic. If you want the public to come, December 22nd is really not a good time to do it. So I'm just asking you, I mean, it just looks, it's a bad look for everybody.
I got it. And we got this comment last time. Unfortunately, when we set the schedule, we only had one meeting. We still have other business to attend to. And unfortunately, that's just the timing that we came up with as the best possible.
Okay, just be prepared for blowback in the
Absolutely.
future.
I am
And,
very well prepared
just-
for it.
Okay, I'll be up here again on December 22nd.
I'll be here too.
But I also, I just heard everything that went on. I went to that meeting, the planning board meeting, and it's just a comment. I truthfully felt, not knowing most of the members of the planning board, I felt that just hearing what they had to say, there were some number of planning board members who just seemed to want to rubber stamp what was going on. And it was so obvious. I mean, I really was just listening and said, wow, that person really wants this to be over and wants to accept this. It's a very important project, and I know you guys understand it, but you keep hearing us get up here, and one by one, we're all saying something. The bond. We had heard somebody get up here and at the planning board and ask the developer about maybe put your money where your mouth is, say you'll have a bond. And he said, for sure, no, we're not going to do that. So I'm not sure if that's a different bond that you mentioned. That's if he transfers it. Excuse me?
Jay, please, Jay.
Anyway, I don't know if
Jay,
it's a different bond.
please, Jay, I do not disrespect you ever. I'm asking for the same respect. Yes, you are. You're yelling out in the middle of my meeting. I'm asking you not to. I'm asking you not to, sir. Thank you.
So,
Andy, can you please answer her question before she was interrupted?
Well, I'm not sure the bond that we're speaking of, before the board, but
Correct.
I wasn't there.
I want you to clarify only the redevelopment bond that you were talking about. We're not talking about the planning board.
Yeah.
I already answered the comments about the rubber stamp earlier. And
Yeah, the
please.
redevelopment area bond is a non-recourse bond. That means the developer will be obligated to repay the bond through the pilot payments, so that no township tax dollars repay that debt.
one other question, comment is we haven't gotten to it yet. I think maybe it'll be the next planning board, and also for you guys. The traffic in that area has become horrendous in the last few years. I heard some people say, I don't know if it's on this board or the other one, that, oh, well, before all the people from Vonage worked there. The people who were working there in Vonage was way before the last 5 years when so many people moved into this county. Maybe because of the pandemic, but I'm sure you all have seen Route 35, Route 34, Lloyd Road, everywhere, 520. Is just horrendous from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So keep that in mind, that there needs to be some kind of traffic study as well. Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Definitely mentioned that earlier. Traffic is a huge concern. Ralph, come on up.
Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. Two quickies. With regard to the Vonage thing, I think it is a normal, and I refer to Mike or Andy about this process, with any development project, after all the approvals are in, then prior to the issuing of construction permits, the applicant is required to bond for the entire cost of the improvements for that phase. Is that still in effect?
Well, no. Historically, before the law changed, developers had a bond, did have to do that. Now you have to bond, well, strike that. You have to bond if there's public improvements associated with the project. So like they have to make a road improvement as a condition of the board approval.
But isn't there bonding also for maintenance?
So
For
after
a public improvement.
For a public improvement.
Limited to public improvements?
If a public improvement, after it's done, then there's a maintenance
Section
bond
53 of the
of
municipal
the
land
land
use law.
use law.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
Yep.
Then, the ordinance 2531, which is lot line adjustment for Crawford Hill. That wasn't on the agenda 24 hours ago. And is it now on?
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Is that lot line adjustment, it indicated there's an exhibit for it. Is that online?
It is, correct, Michael? And Ralph, that is something that we did add. That was obviously done 2 years ago, as you're well aware of, and we're just still dealing with, just let me finish quick. We're still dealing with, obviously, the owner of the property and what's going on. So it was something that we had to have in place before the end of this year, and we didn't feel it was a controversial item since it was already discussed at length.
Okay, good. So I'll take a look at it online then.
It's online.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Any other public comments?
Thank you for an excellent
Come on up, Lance.
meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ralph.
Lance Loopy, Line Road. These are in zero order. I'm still not clear on the 80-20 rule. Not really sure what that means. I mean, the way I hear that is 80% of the housing, 20% of the housing could have kids in it. I don't know what that means. So I'd like clarification on that. How do you audit that? How do you actually know what's going on? Still unclear about the rec center and the costs associated with that. Is the developer paying for that rec center, the helipad, all these other things, these pickleball courts? Speaking of pickleball courts.
For all the development of that, yes, they are, Ralph.
Okay.
Yes.
Lance.
Sorry,
That's
Lance.
okay. That's Ralph.
It's been late.
Who pays? We pay for the upkeep of the helipad. What does it cost to update a helipad and maintain a helipad? Do we have a budget for that? Do we know what that is?
I don't believe we pay for that.
Okay. Speaking of pickleball courts, last meeting I asked about our pickleball, $1.3 million pickleball courts in Homedale. I was told I would get stats and haven't received those, so I don't know if we have those. We're prepared for that for tonight.
Chris, we told him we'd get him the details with the grant and the
Yep.
funds that were utilized.
Well-
The majority were grants.
Well,
If we
what's
can
the
make sure we
usage?
get
we
that
have a
to
website that you have to.
and let's ask Bob to
Right.
compile
We have a
the
website, you have to use
usage
the website
in its
in order
first
to-
year of existence.
Yeah, I believe we'll be able to do that.
I don't know
Mayor.
why we needed to do that. You know, there's plenty of commercial pickleball establishments available for people to use. How do I get a pilot? I'd like 8 to 10% off my bill. I don't have a kid in school anymore, so that'd be great for me if I could get a pilot. But let me know where I can get the paperwork for that. So none of the Regency money, because I think a comment that was made during the presentation was that everyone in the town pays the same taxes. It goes all to the same places. But I think we established that 185 in the Regency are not paying taxes. They're paying some 90% of that. So if the entire town's tax rate was based on those 185 homes, how much would the school get? 0. Clarifies your point that you made that talked about, you know, it just changes the size of the pie, how many slices are out of it. So, you know, to say that the pilot doesn't impact school, yes, the school budget is a school budget, right? But the amount of people paying for it changes with this. And the 185 people in Regency don't pay towards that school budget. I do, and everyone else in this room does, unless they live in one of those Regency dwellings. I think that's an accurate statement. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Why, I don't understand why we care if a developer doesn't get a loan. So why are we giving this pilot? Because we're concerned that they won't get the financing. Okay, so the land stays vacant. We get the 245 to the school, 100 to the town, whatever it is, what it is. It's what it's been. It hasn't changed any. So I don't understand this. This property, the Vonage property, so based on what I hear is the 30-year agreement is tied to the property itself, and those 185 units are tax reduced for the next 30 years or 30 years from for the original sale date. What happens if this property, what if it happens if it goes belly up, something happens? Does that pilot apply to whoever takes over the property and whatever they do with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. I will say the one thing that I don't want to say I struggle with, but basically the one thing I had to come to terms with in my head, Lance, is a great point that you brought up. And I think the only, in my opinion, really valid point about a pilot. And it's what about the people who aren't receiving the pilot? Because that is a 100% a great question. And it's true that they are paying a little bit more in taxes. But if you asked me 10 years ago, as a homeowner, and you said, listen, we could do this development over here, and we can keep your taxes lower for a longer period of time, that you will significantly benefit by this development, I would sign on for that. Now, I wasn't on the committee in 2016 when that was signed for, but I'm glad they did. And I'm hoping that this pilot that we're looking to move forward with here has the same benefits to this town, because I live in this town. I have 4 kids in the school system in this town. As I pointed out, I served on the Board of Ed, and I'm very comfortable with the additional money we're giving them since they're not losing any money. We're trying to help them out as best we can, which we've done every year. And I think overall, as far as the traffic and everything else we've discussed tonight, and as far as what they have to go through to get their approvals, I think what could have happened in the case of Builder's Remedy or what we were facing with the affordable mandated housing could have been a lot worse. That's my 2 cents. I'm not speaking for anybody else on the committee. Any other public comments? Come on up, Ken.
Ken G. H. Say Street. On the ordinance, there was a attached exhibit financial agreement that was actually not on the agenda. Will you provide that before the public hearing?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. It was added later today. It was updated, and I alerted everybody as well, so it is on there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And Ken, apologies again. Like, how many pages, Andy? How many hundreds? You know, the process, unfortunately, just a lot going on, and literally up until and literally up until 5 o'clock today, Eric and I were speaking, going back and forth. So
no worries.
Trying to get it in, trying to get it done.
Wendy's
It'll all
on
be
top.
out there. We've been transparent about every single thing, and we're going to continue that. Any other public comments? Can I get a motion?